In this dream, I was wandering through what seemed a very grand shopping mall. All manner of wares and products available. Nothing very out of the ordinary. Pretty atypical exchanges of the sort of goods you'd expect to find at such a place. However, there was one stall that was providing something a little different. The individuals here were promoting a product that apparently would grant the consumer magical powers and ability to be able to manipulate the physical level. My real self activated its deception detectors and was able to determine the reality of this situation. These individuals were scamming people. The product would do nothing as advertised. Seems that the duped customers had to first be injected with a kind of drug, and these supposed peddlers of superpowers would inform the soon-to-be superhero that it was necessary to place them into a sort of trance, a comatose state, and then a further administering of a serum would imbue the dozing person with the magical capabilities as advertised. The real self, if connected to on the real side, can see and read everything of the real side situations it comes across. It can determine authenticity and intent of any individual. The real self is with the ears, in a state where it can oversee and overlook all of creation. It can see all its nuances, including the details that deceptive individuals would rather remain hidden. In other words, the real awareness can see beyond the marketed deceptive fronts that the personal, literal, one-dimensional self would be unable to. On the physical level, deception is easiest of all. If we are locked into our personal created selves only, we can only see what our literal senses reveal to us. We don't see what all the agreed to ideas actually represent if we haven't the awareness to perceive beyond the shiny and fine surface world. On the real side, the personal self can be just as easily deceived, as its awareness tends only be very limited to certain personally chosen areas of creation to visit in the dream state. a personal self that wouldn't have the recognition to delve very far into the creational life levels, probably not far beyond the astral, as the personal self generally indulges in emotional wants predominantly, and this would be so on the real side also. Astral level shenanigans chiefly. The deceptive individuals lack awareness also beyond the astral level, so it's generally only on the physical and astral they can be deceptive. The levels beyond they would have no awareness of, and so would not be able to regulate their behaviour and maintain a deceptive front. And so, if our awareness takes us to areas of creation beyond a deceptor's ability to recognize and be aware of, then we will see their skullduggery laid bare, because everyone has 5 vehicles, and whatever they focus on, decide, whatever is their agenda, is played out with each of their 5 vehicles on the 5 levels, the instant they think, decide, or ponder whatever they do, as everything is on the real side. So thoughts, agendas, and decisions manifest the instant they are created as ideas. So a deceptive individual with a deceptive agenda can only be deceptive on the physical level predominantly, but beyond that, according to how far their awareness goes, the deception is revealed on the real side, as is the true intent of the individual, for anyone with recognitional, real self-awareness eyes to see. Anyway, what was actually going on in this experience was available as information for my real self. The would-be superhero customers would indeed receive their coma-inducing vaccination, but while in this state, they would not be administered what was advertised. Instead, each customer, or victim in fact, would be taken beneath ground to a facility and have their organs harvested. This organ harvesting, of course, goes on the physical level all the time, and so we can construe this as a demonstrational verification of this practice. The superpowers part just being an over-exaggerated demonstration of the means by which people may be duped into putting themselves in such a compromising position. the idea being that the individual thinks the coma will result in something beneficial, but turns out to be anything but. However, there was an interesting element to this situation. These dubious deceptors had the ability to determine if the internal organs were desirable, fit for purpose. Obviously, the healthier the organs, the better. They had little devices that scanned the body and ascertained the viability of the organs. With this technology, perhaps these characters were aliens of a kind, though they looked very human. But then you do get human-looking aliens. My real self could have read their species, but had no interest in doing so. Instead, the real self took an opportunity to verify something else, not to itself, as it knows everything, but to my personal self, a verification for the benefit of my personal self that is always along for the real side adventures. My personal self wouldn't know what was going on, or why the real self did what it did next. But I accepted the proposal of these individuals to assume superpowers, knowing full well it was a scam, and a rather hazardous one at that. I would be administered the coma-inducing serum, and found myself slipping into a trance. Then the individuals scanned their device over me to determine the quality of my organs. Moments later, they were shaking me back into wakefulness, seeming to be put out of countenance, and sending me on my way. I would inquire as to why this was so, and they informed me that my internal organs were so infused with technologies, nanoparticles and such, that they were effectively useless. A dawning realization as to why my real self had gone along with this situation then, as it had already determined the whole thing to be a scam. The real self and awareness is a being-isness state, and in that state of is, it knows everything. But information has to be passed to the personal self for its considerations, warnings, demonstrations and comparisons. The real guides then set up situations and demonstrations this way, that what the personal self needs to know now can be provided, if we have the recognition to do so, through created scenes, or we may go into an area of creation on the real side, where we walk into situations and must recognize what the experience we had was intending to demonstrate. The real guides, then, may have found this situation on the real side, and yes, a verification of organ harvesting that goes on, but also, by going along with the scene, a further verification of how the physical vehicles are all becoming technologically nano-infused. A verification I wouldn't have had if my real self hadn't gone along with the procedure, and these charlatans effectively afforded the verification with their internal organ scanning devices. We know, of course, that the chemtrails, the vaccinations, and the food is full of nanoparticles. We also have had real side demonstrations that confirm that when 5G is activated globally, the nanoparticles will activate and robotize the human species. So it was a further verification of the gradual robotization process that is taking place now, for they are slowly ramping up the 5G technologies, installing all their delivery systems and satellites. Towns and cities are becoming 5G smart cities, a slow roll-out of this technological electromagnetic control grid, a robotization process that will lock in the physical vehicles into a programmed and controlled rigidity that will make conscious free will thought a thing of the past. Up until now, we consciously or unconsciously activate our created ideas through the faculties of the 5 body vehicles to generate our experiences in the cause and effect creational simulator. This is our free will to create and experience whatever we will. In this scenario, however, the controllers, the dark forces, will effectively take away free will and have the control of the experience generator that is the personal created self, by virtue of the fact it is robotized, and its very thoughts, emotions, are controlled and dictated to. Up until now, it has been deceptive marketing of what appears to be, on the surface, beneficial ideas that are actually ideas of control that have garnered agreement and effected the controlled world we collectively experience, along with the subliminals and subconscious programming. The robotization and complete control of the idea-creating vehicles will be the next step. A mass robotization, that is the overall experiential effect of agreement to ideas of control and restriction. The body vehicles reflecting the extent to which they agree with restricting, limiting, and awareness subduing ideas. A robotic rigid vehicle being a further expression of the effect of more compounded agreements to control. And so, the robotization is in effect now. I would suggest the real side experience demonstrates this process is underway, and we are being robotized gradually from the inside out. Interestingly, prior to this dream, I had another real side dream, which was difficult for my personal self to grasp completely, but for the main theme, a definite demonstration along these lines. That of robotization, a dream that would hammer this point for the duration of that entire night, suggesting this was now well underway with the human species and physical vehicles. Then, literally the next day, I had the real side dream I just recounted, and the very next night a final verification. Many times, real side dream themes tend come in threes, as though to impress the point, and this seems to underline the seriousness of the experience, the necessity to pay attention to whatever is being demonstrated.